So welcome, our beloved colleague Tim. It's so good to see you, my friend. And as always, at Setsi, we begin all things by acknowledging our creator, by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So, Tim, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers and share a bit about your remarkable work?
Victor, sure. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to see your smile. I love it. I think that, just you inspire me so much. So it's great to be here. A bit about me is that I'm a certified financial planner. So my company is called Good Investing. Really, my origin story is that I grew up in London, Ontario, with my dad in the investment industry. So I kind of grew up around stocks and bonds, studied economics and philosophy in my undergrad. So I was always kind of a weirdo in each of those departments and had a lot of issues with our economic system. Really wasn't happy with a lot of the models that I was learning. So, really had way more questions than I had answers. Went to Sweden and did my master's in sustainability. And that's where really learned about so many different economic models, investment models, social models, just ways of living and doing things that really focused on this notion of sustainability. Did my thesis focused on this topic of socially responsible investing. This was in 2007, 2008. I came back to Canada in July of 2008, ready to take the investment world by storm, and graduated straight into the crash. So sadly, there were no jobs in the financial industry. At the same time, sustainability got thrown on the back burner. So that's when I started my first business, and I've been a social entrepreneur ever since. Really, my mission is to help people make intentional decisions, specifically around their investments. People have a lot of emotions around money, right? A lot of guilt, a lot of shame, a lot of feelings. And so I help people come to terms with those emotions and then make smart, intentional decisions about how they want to invest. Obviously, it's important to look after you and your family, and you want to build wealth for your family. But I want people to do it in a more intentional way to try to minimize some of the harm that they might be doing unintentionally through their investments. And then, if they're up for it, carve out part of their portfolio to really do more good in the world and really ask themselves, what is the world I want to retire into? What is the world I want my kids to go to school and graduate into? And how can I, as I'm saving for those financial goals, also align my investments with that vision?
That's absolutely remarkable. We really appreciate your visionary leadership and all that context. It's incredible how you're able to conflate all that in 30. Like you're a pro, my friend. I appreciate you. So let me
Thank you
ask you
so
another
much.
question. What
Yeah.
inspires you most right now in your work? What has you curious? Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, right now, it's interesting. You always start by honoring our elders. And I've got one elder that's been really top of mind for me lately, a mentor named Hazel Henderson. And Hazel Henderson is a woman, remarkable woman. She wrote a book in 1982 called The Politics of the Solar Age, about the need to transition from the old fossil fuel economy into a new solar renewable energy economy. That's the year I was born, Victor, 1982. So she's been at this, for decades. Sadly, she passed last year. And so, really she's been in my heart and on my mind lately, because when I graduated from my master's program and really didn't have many opportunities going for me then, she and I collaborated on a project called the Green Transition Scoreboard. And the idea, this was back in 2009 that we came up with this idea. And the idea at that time is that we knew this green transition was just starting, but we wanted to measure the flow of private investment, of capital into these green sectors. And the question was, how much money is flowing? And so I remember counting for the first time in 2010, I believe we published our first report, and we showed more than $1 trillion flowing into green sectors, which was way more than we realized, way more than anyone thought it was. And it was just really a good news story, in that we started counting every single year and watched that number grow. And now in about 2019, 2020, I got busy, business took over, her health wasn't doing great. So we kind of hit pause on that project. We did it for about a decade. But I'm really happy to say that we're bringing that project back. And so over the last couple of months, I've been doing a lot of research around the green economy, and I've been counting investments, and basically showing that 2022, I mean, it really felt in a lot of ways that we took a step back on the green economy. There was a lot, the price of oil shot up. So oil companies were making a lot of profits, and, a lot of the ESG, the sort of environmental social governance part of sustainable investing, a lot of that narrative really kind of took hold. And it feels like fossil fuel kind of felt like they were making a comeback last year somehow, and that the green economy was losing. But I'm here to say that isn't the case at all. Looking at the numbers, more than $2.5 trillion got invested last year. The growth is still, we're talking double digits, around 13 to 15%. Certain green themes like electric cars are obviously just soaring, but even things like water infrastructure, renewable energy, grid upgrades. So, really for me, what's inspiring me right now, I think that there is a bit of a narrative that we're losing, around climate change and around a lot of economic issues, and all this debate in Canada right now about the carbon tax. And it just feels really like, it feels like we're in a tough slog. And so what's inspiring me is just reminding people that, like, hey, the economy is shifting, like it's happening. The money's flowing. I'm here to tell you it's happening. It's undeniable. And bluntly, it's unstoppable. Like, it's no politician. You can slow it down, right? And we can talk about whether the transition is happening fast enough, understanding a lot of the climate issues that we're facing, that's worthwhile, that we could always be doing more. But I'm here to say that the transition to a cleaner, greener economy is well underway. It's way bigger than people realize. And in my mind, it is inevitable. It's just a question of time rather than, will it happen or not?
Ashe, that's incredible. Well, one, I didn't know you were a year older than me. I was born 1983. So you're a senior to me by a year, and definitely a remarkable moment of silence or just intention for Hazel Henderson. That's remarkable work that spans decades in terms of this work. And interesting enough, my last meeting for the day was with some colleagues. We're planning some conversations in a couple of weeks around CAFA, the Climate Aligned Finance Act, which is literally, I feel, the gold standard that we're hoping that all parties will adopt, and Senator Galva's bill will move forward. But with that being said, I don't want to get too political in this conversation. But the fact remains that is truly inspiring that you shared all those actionable insights, and the fact that, as you said, 2.5 trillion, double digits. It's not going anywhere. We're going to go towards where we need to go, primarily because we can no longer sustain the type of, or the iteration of capitalism that we currently exist in. So once again, I applaud your leadership, your candor, your transparency. So another question: what challenges and barriers do you face in your work, and how are you and your colleagues working to overcome some of these challenges?
I mean, it's just constant learning, Victor. Like, it really is, social entrepreneurship is such a journey. And I've been through so many different business models over the years. And, it's fun for me. I did land on one that worked, moderately well. Probably the biggest lesson that I've had over the last, year to 2 years is that when I founded Good Investing that would have been 6 years ago, so 2017, I believe, is when I sort of rebranded and, got my CFP designation and really kind of started working full time as a financial planner. And at that time, I assumed there was going to be this huge shift towards do-it-yourself investing. That right now, the kind of the landscape for personal, what in the industry we call retail investments. So that's kind of juxtaposed against institutional investors, which are the big fish, the $1 million foundations, pensions. That's all stuff's institutional. I'm focused on the retail market, which is just regular everyday folks who are saving for their financial goals. And that, that industry is dominated by the big banks who sell mutual funds. And mutual funds are good and fine. There's nothing wrong with a mutual fund, except they're very, very expensive. And people don't realize the fees that they're paying on their mutual funds. So over the last little while, over the last decade or so, we've seen a rise in, instead of mutual funds, these things called exchange traded funds, or ETFs, which are essentially the same thing as a mutual fund. It's like the same thing, but they're a fraction of the cost. They're way cheaper and you can do them yourself. So we've seen growth in terms of DIY investing. And when I rebranded in 2017, I assumed that everyone was going to realize that the banks were ripping them off and that there was going to be this flood of people who wanted to shift into DIY investments and do it themselves using these much cheaper ETFs. This was the time when Wealthsimple was doing Super Bowl commercials, when Questrade was starting to advertise to Canadians about, how you're getting ripped off by your broker, right, by your advisor. And so, really, I felt that there was going to be this huge shift. And frankly, it just hasn't happened. A lot of these, we call them fintech companies, financial technologies, really didn't live up to their promise. And that also, the psychology of people's money, it's just so strong, especially here in Canada, that, it has remained about 1% of the market is DIY investors, which is tiny. And I thought that was going to grow substantially, and it just hasn't. So, to me, my goal is to help as many people as possible. I thought I would do that by focusing on the do-it-yourself investors. There was a bit of a gap there. But the big lesson that I've had over the last couple of years is that not everyone wants to be a DIY investor, right? And that's just the reality of the situation. And so for me, it's been an opportunity to be able to expand my partnerships and to have broader conversations and to look at what are some of the sustainable solutions for people who don't want to become DIY investors, and how can I help promote that? And how can I, regardless of where people are, whether they want to do it themselves, whether they don't, when someone comes to me and they say, Tim, I want help, shifting my investments into sustainability, how do I have as clear and as simple a path for them to be able to really, invest intentionally and align things with their values? So, that's been one of my big challenges, because when it comes to this, if you're not doing it yourself, if you're paying someone to do it for you, one of the biggest barriers in Canada is accessibility. That a lot of these advisors, they have very large minimum investments, right? They'll only work with you if you've got, $1 million or more money. And most of us just don't have $1 million. So, really the biggest challenge for me has been finding partners, who are willing to make it more accessible, and really that are willing to, understand that not everyone is, super wealthy. And so how can we partner to provide education and options, for absolutely every Canadian who wants to shift their money in a more sustainable direction?
That's absolutely beautiful, and I appreciate your leadership and the fact that, once again, that values aligned framework around impact and really focusing on the consumer or the retail side, once again shows your leadership, and not only that, so your level of commitment to community economic development. So really appreciate you, Tim. Really appreciate you.
Thank you, Victor. I mean, it's been challenging, right? Like, I think an easier path for me, if I was trying to, maximize my bank account, would have been to, start working with wealthier individuals and kind of climb that, wealth ladder and do that. But to me, it's really understanding that it's not about necessarily the flow of dollars. Like originally, when I came out of school, my change theory was about shifting $1 billion towards sustainability. I talk about the river of money, and I wanted to redirect that flow of capital. But that, what I realized is that it's so much less about the money, and it's so much more about people's mindsets. That's where I think the real change needs to happen, because we need, for this system to shift in the way that we do, we certainly need capital and investors on board. But to your point, we need politicians on board, and we need businesses on board, and we need the nonprofit sector on board, and we need communities who are most affected by these problems on board. And it really needs to be this big collaborative endeavor. And so that for me, what I'm so passionate about, but what's also been a challenge for me, is having this focus on the retail, the everyday lay person. That I think the problem is that so often if the regular people are not able to contribute, they don't feel like they're part of the solution to it, that they're going to be resistant to change on all those other levels. And so, really having that focus on, letting regular everyday people, no matter how much you've got in your bank account, participate in this transition. To me, it's just such a critical part of my change theory. And that's why I no longer talk about trying to shift money, that now my mission is to help millions Canadians invest intentionally. And by shifting my change theory from dollars to mindsets, that's really opened up some amazing opportunities in community building and education. It's not an easy way to grow a business. Education takes time, it takes money, it takes effort before people are sort of ready to come on board and commit. But, it's certainly been a very rewarding experience for me. And I think that over the long term, really hoping to, I've always, a friend of mine gave me this analogy of growing like bamboo, really focusing on the roots. And if you can spend some time really establishing those strong roots, then all of a sudden it allows you to just, shoot up straight up to the sky. And so, to me, the work that I've put in over the last 10, 15 years, really building those roots within the sustainable finance community here in Canada, it's kind of nice. I'm now starting to see, the incredible amount of growth that's possible.
Absolutely. And just the ability to pivot. Like that's another trait of bamboo. Do you want to be like oak, brittle, or what's stronger, bamboo that can bend? And I think that that ability to pivot from dollars to people and mindsets is brilliant. And even focusing on knowledge products, that's a legacy. Your colleague Henderson, her book was written in 1982, a year before my birth, and the year you were born, that's a legacy. That's a book I'm going to look up, and our listeners and viewers are going to look up. So that education piece and knowledge products is also something that's really important, because capacity strengthening in this ecosystem is so important to the everyday Canadian that's literally living check to check, trying to, on the retail side, doesn't have $1 million, and major financial stakeholders and actors, institutions may not have the wherewithal, capacity, bandwidth, or even the care to want to engage them in a meaningful way. So I appreciate once again your leadership. So my next question is, how do you feel about the future of impact investing in Canada?
I'm excited. I think that, and just the framework that I use, let me just, take a moment to just sort of set the scene a little bit. But I use a very broad umbrella term, which is sustainable investing. When I started in the industry, it was called socially responsible investing. Then they kind of dropped the social and it became responsible investing. I like to call it sustainable investing. And then under that big umbrella, I kind of have two different areas that I call doing less evil versus doing more good. And the doing less evil, this is where we're trying to earn the market rates of return. And this is, where most people should invest most of their money, where we can use tactics like divestment, so excluding certain sectors or companies that we think are too evil. We can also use this ESG, environmental social governance analysis, to get companies to measure their impacts. And we can also use what's called shareholder engagement or stewardship, where by owning shares, we can actually push companies to be able to, move in the right direction. From there, on the other side of the equation is the doing more good side. And this is where, we can talk about what I call thematic investments, which is investing in themes. And these themes could be green themes like renewable energy or clean tech or water. You could invest in things around the sustainable development goals. But again, those are still sort of, we're investing in the stock market. And then the piece that I'm really passionate about, that I think you're asking me about, is impact investing, which is very much on that doing more good side. But this is not going to be, in traditional stocks and bonds on the stock market. This is going to be the crunchy granola side of the market, where it's things like, co-ops and nonprofits and microfinance and community bonds, and, that really grassroots impact first part of the sustainable investment ecosystem. So to me, impact investing has always kind of been overshadowed by the rest of the market. That, as I went to conferences and spoke at events, that the whole sort of doing less evil around divestment from fossil fuels or around ESG, like, oh my goodness, the number of news articles and, things like that I see, it's, honestly, there's so much talk around the doing less evil side of things. And impact investing has always been kind of in the corner a little bit. And, there were, along with some colleagues, a small number of people really pushing for that, within the sustainable investment ecosystem, right? And trying to, kind of carve out little spaces for us here and there. But I'm happy to say that now impact investing has definitely, I think, found its foothold within those conversations. And I think especially for a lot of folks that kind of look at the system and realize the system is busted and want to invest in a new sort of economic paradigm, right? That these impact investments are so much more attractive to them. And that, really to me, it's been so exciting to see the development of both supply and demand, because when I started in this field and I would educate people, there wasn't a lot of supply. There would be, a community bond offering, once in a blue moon. If you were lucky, there would be one available. Now I've got a database on my website of, at least 10 to a dozen that are currently available now across Canada, right? At any given time, there are a whole bunch of them that are available. And then number two is on the demand side. That, it used to be a real challenge for organizations who are raising money through community bond or impact investment. Now we're starting to see the taps open up, that, it's certainly a lot easier for them to raise money than it used to be. Part and parcel to this, what's really been, driving things, and, I've been following along with the YouTube channel and some of the interviews you've done, with the Social Finance Fund. Again, we won't get sort of too political about this, but, that certainly is, I would say, if the tap's been open, that's kind of the floodgates. That's more capital than we could ever sort of dream of flowing in to this impact sector. But it certainly hasn't been a sort of a seamless rollout. Like, there's certainly a lot of glitches along the way. And I think that, that's kind of my worry, is that, if things grow too quickly, kind of all at once, that, like a little bit of water is great for an ecosystem. Too much water all at once can flood it, right? So, I think that we do need to be cautious over the next few years, that as more money is flowing in, to making sure that we have enough capacity, that the ecosystem is strong enough, and, is diverse enough, and is big enough and welcoming enough to be able to find a place for all that new money that is flowing into the sector. So, to me, I think these are good problems to have. Like, I'd love to have that problem compared to, not enough money flowing into the sector. But I do think that we're seeing some growing pains right now, but they are growing pains that, as a whole, the ecosystem really is in a growth evolution phase right now. And as a result, I'm really excited to be, part of some of the conversations about, how it should grow, and where do we direct those flows of capital. And then obviously what I want to do is just bring as many people on board as possible, right? Especially on the investor side, so that it's not just relying on government money. If we get a change in government or something happens and it all disappears, like, to me, it's like we need diversification both on the supply side and on the demand side in order for it to be a resilient ecosystem.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm not going to touch the social finance fund today, because that would be a 2-hour, 5-year conversation since the fall economic statement of 2018. So we'll leave that for another day, Tim. But I appreciate all those brilliant actual insights. And yeah, like, I believe your analysis is bang on as always. So my last question: do you have any closing thoughts or calls to action for our listeners and viewers?
Oh my God. Always, always, always. So if people want to connect with me and kind of follow my work, that's always a great call to action. Is my website is goodinvesting.com. You can sign up for my newsletter to get all my wonderful updates and all the things that I do as well. I do have some free resources there. So some model portfolios, and in my free resources, the list of impact investments, I really think would be a very wonderful resource for the people who are listening to this podcast and watching this on YouTube. And that really, from there, my big call to action is just to get people to think about where their money is. I meet so many people who have dedicated their lives and their careers to impact, right? And they make very intentional decisions when it comes to how they make their money, right? What job you take and how you're going to earn a living. They make great decisions, very intentional when it comes to how do they spend their money. They want to buy local, they want to buy sustainable. But when it comes to their savings, their banking and their investments, they just haven't given it that same level of intentionality. So I really want people to give some thought to their savings. And, number one is always with your basic bank account, checking and savings. We have a wonderful credit union system here in Canada. Depending what province you're in, you've got some awesome options that are available to you. with my experience with credit unions is that my fees have gone down and the level of service that I've gotten has gone up. So, to me, it's just been an absolute no-brainer to join a credit union and do my banking there. And then obviously when it comes to your investments, just be really intentional to ask, not only like, what am I investing in? Like what's inside these funds? It can be very opaque. A lot of people don't, sort of look under the carpet to see what's actually inside their investments, but also what are the fees that I'm paying? That, unfortunately, I just see so many Canadians kind of go through this default setting where they just walk into the bank, they're sold a product where they don't understand the fees and how that works. And sadly, most Canadians, if you're invested in mutual funds through the bank, that you're going to end up with retiring with about half as much money as you would have otherwise. That the impact of those higher fees legit will eat away half of your nest egg over a multi-decade period. And, I just really want people to understand what their options are, that there are cheaper options, there are more sustainable options, to shop around a little bit, give some thought, and obviously just know that I'm here specifically for people who want to make a positive impact with their investments. That what I love more than anything else is just talking to people and helping people kind of sort out their personal finances. So the last call to action is that if you're in a privileged position where you've got some money and you want to, you've got some investments and you want to make the switch, then I, for everyone, a free consultation, sign up on my website, happy to sit down for half an hour and see if I can help you out. And if I'm not the person to help them, then, I'll refer them, I'll point them in the right direction, because there are some amazing opportunities available. It's not that hard, and you can get the same level of financial returns when you align your investments with your values.
Incredible, incredible. Tim, always a pleasure, my friend. Always a pleasure, my beloved friend. So we'll close the way we began this interview by acknowledging our creator, by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands we're on, by acknowledging all our ancestors, by acknowledging all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Thank you so much, Tim, for your leadership and all the love that you show so many. Thank you.
Victor, thank you so much.